In recent times, story is king. For horror anyways. With a massive focus on lore, for better or for worse, games have been focusing much more on the characters, the motivations, and most importantly, the twists. But with twists, it's entirely reliant on good execution to pull it off. Whether that be a good build-up, or just making you like the characters enough to care. Though it's only natural in an era where there are more horror games than ever, that there are games that don't stick the landing. And even more so that there are games that do such a poor job with their plot twists that ruins their story. Sometimes it just doesn't make any sense, or there's no way to predict it. Or it's the opposite, where it's so easy to predict that if they hadn't gone with the obvious option, their game would be so much better. Or they decide to go for shock value for the sake of shock value, mistaking darker triggering themes as an easy way to make you react. And so that's what we're here for today, going through the trenches to find the worst of the worst twists in these games, both from good games, bad games, and so bad it's good games that I could find. But before we jump in, I'd like to go over some rules. First off, I'll not be going over any Game Jam games, as due to their short and strict deadlines, of course some of them are going to have rushed endings, so none of those will be included here. Secondly, I'll not be including any fan games of other franchises, so no EXE games, SpongeBob Horror, or FNAF fan games. I might do a separate list about those in the future if people like this video enough, but until then, I'll only be going over original games and franchises. Lastly, these are all just my opinion, based on the games I know of. There may be games that have even worse twists out there that I just didn't know about, and of course, just because I don't like a twist does not mean I do not like the game itself, the fans, or the people behind it. Some of the games I'll be talking about are actually really well made, or really old, or made by devs in their earlier years of game making, so no hate to them. We are solely attacking the twists here, not the people who made them, or the people who enjoy them for what they are. Now then, with that out of the way, let's go over the 8 worst twists in indie horror. In my opinion. Number 8. You were just really high. Hospital 9. Hospital 9 is a pretty short first-person survival horror game. After your car breaks down, you and your girlfriend Rena enter an abandoned hospital filled with zombie ghosts. Finding a Glock, you gun down these zombie ghosts as you explore the building. The whole gimmick behind this game is that your primary light source isn't a flashlight, but rather your girlfriend who constantly follows you, emanating this pink aura. As you fight against the game's glitches and accidental softlocks, you eventually come across this bedroom, which your character remarks is familiar to them. And shortly thereafter, you find some books on a table about summoning Oriental ghosts. Now you may think that this is leading up to the idea that someone at the hospital summoned these zombie ghosts and that they went rogue or something, but no, that's not it, because it's actually revealed that you were trying to bring your girlfriend Rena back from the dead after they died in an accident, and that one of the rituals that the book recommended just made you really high. Yet Rena's ghost isn't real, zombie ghosts aren't real, I guess you were just shooting up a random abandoned hospital. Eventually though, the player just kind of comes to their senses by a random character we never met, and decides to stop trying to revive the dead. Because of how poorly made some aspects of the game are, and what little story we get before the reveal, there's little to no build-up that allows us the slightest chance of predicting that nothing we were experiencing was real. If anything, it just feels like a more complicated version of the "it was all a dream" plotline that everyone hates, which it effectively is. Though I have it pretty far down the list because between the asset flips and clunky gameplay, it seems like this was the developer's first Unity game, or at the very least a very early game in their development history. It also doesn't help that this game was likely translated from another language, as some of the odd phrasings and grammar mistakes made in it seem like the developer used Google Translate to port the game to other languages. And so, it marks the spot as number 8. Number 7. Your parents killed orphans for Satanism. From Evil. Another, albeit far more infamous, badly translated horror game, Evil follows a woman named Kinesia, who is suffering from insomnia and is staying at home alone while their parents are away. However, after seeing a strange lady pass by your room, you decide to go wash your face with cold water to see if you are just hallucinating. This leads to her finding various things, however, such as 2 satanic books, all the while the demonic entity torments her. Towards the end of the game, Kinesia goes down to the basement where the lady finally stops attempting to murder us. She then explains in hard-to-read red text that your parents had taken you and your 2 siblings out of the orphanage and raised you solely for use in satanic rituals. Even though it costs like $250,000 to raise a child throughout their entire life, and there was 3 of us bumping up to like $700 million, and between us and our sister we look like 20, meaning if we ever found out about it, like through the multiple satanic books lying around, we could probably just leave, which I imagine would be a pretty bad outcome of your $250,000 investment. Point being, it turns out the entity, which, need I remind you, is tormenting and trying to kill us throughout the entire game, is actually our sister, named Sarah, who our parents told us died of cancer, but in reality was used in this ritual. Sarah tells us that soon our parents will kill us too, and that we need to set her free and kill our parents or else Sarah will kill us. So much for sisterly love. I'm sure you don't need me to tell you why this twist kinda sucks. If our sister wanted us to find out about our parents sacrificing our siblings, then why can't she kill you? And for that matter, if it was even a secret, why would the parents leave their ritual books in very easy to access locations while they're gone for a prolonged period? And again, it doesn't make sense that they'd wait this long to do it anyways. It's just a massive cop-out ending that feels slapped on at the last second, probably because it was. Plus, it's always pretty boring when a story gives a character's whole motivation as they needed sacrifices for the ritual. Because in cases like these, there's no real motivation behind it. Like, why were these people so desperate to do this ritual that they adopted 3 orphans, raised them, all the while slowly bonding with them for 20 years, only to want to murder them in cold blood? Although it wouldn't fix most of the other problems this game faces, I feel like it would have definitely made the story a little better should the parents have just had a reason for them to need the ritual, and explained what it did. Though knowing this game, it'd probably be something boring like greed or something. Number 6. Phil kills his family because of books. From Nothing Else. Nothing Else is a pretty old game which tries very hard to be deep in its messaging, particularly with the concept of perspectives and how everyone can have different interpretations of the exact same basic concepts, such as Paradise. The game itself is a basic pixel puzzle game. We follow Phil, who loves to read books. However, as we look around, we find a note that tells us the code for the chest. As we read this though, the text suddenly breaks the fourth wall and tells us we must not let Phil near the book. With nothing else to do though, we ignore this and allow Phil to read the Guide to the Surreal. It goes for a light cosmic horror route where there's layers to reality and beings who live there that are able to mess with ours. Upon reading this, Phil is indeed sent to this layer of reality, made to complete puzzles and escape monsters. We also get more notes telling us, the player, that Phil's gonna become a monster because of you kids and your damn books. But I love books! At the end of the game, we reach an area labeled Personal Hell, where the game takes a sudden shift towards a bad home life angle, where we have presumably Phil's parents arguing. Down a hall, we see ourselves reading, and after some spooky flashing images, we cut to the scene in question. Phil's reading again, to which one of the family members says, "Phil, I knew it! That damn book again! I hate this family! You can all go to hell!" To which Phil puts down his book, pulls out a gun, and shoots them dead. What? And then the game decides to completely change its theme at the last second with a short blurb about how you can't change other people's endings, only your own. What about the whole perspective thing? This whole twist where Kill fills his family reminds me of the whole video games make you violent fiasco people used to push, just for books instead. As a matter of fact, way back in the past, people did think reading books was bad for the mind. Because of this ending, everything I set up just feels wasted and completely pointless. First there's this whole perspective thing it opens up with, then the cosmic horror angle, transported into a mirror world at one point, then there's monsters, and then there's this whole bad home life plotline, but it all ends with him just shooting all of his family members for shit-talking his books. What's he reading? The Minecraft Essential Handbook? A little fun fact. You wanna know who developed this game? It's nobody special, just the person behind I'm Scared. Yeah, that hit me out of nowhere when I first found that out. Absolutely crazy what a few years of progress can do. Number 5. Vincent fed you your girlfriend so he could finally cook with love. From Dead Plate. Okay, I know this is an especially hot take. I want to clarify, just because it's this far down does not mean I think this game is worse than those other ones. It's more so because, at least in my eyes, it's worse for a good game to have a bad twist than a bad game to have one. After all, with all those other games like Evil or Hospital 9, you kind of expect it. It comes with the territory. And it certainly doesn't help that this game is so good in every other aspect. Its art style is amazing, there's these kick-ass nightmare sequences, the dialogue is well written, it's a good game. But the main ending of the game is, well, if it was a dish, I'd call it Dead Plate. For those of you who don't know, Dead Plate is a restaurant tycoon RPG horror game where you play as Rhodey, a person trying to make as much money as possible in a week by working at the town's fancy bistro. Owned by the cold and analytical Vincent, who seems to have a sweet spot for Rhodey, and ironically enough cannot taste, forcing him to analyze reviews of his restaurant in the papers in order to perfect his recipes. In other endings, it's revealed that Rhodey is working here in hopes of making enough money to get their girlfriend back, named Manon, after they took a break from each other due to Rhodey constantly throwing away what he has for her sake. which man dislikes finding exhausting. However, we find that she's seemingly gone dark, not answering any phone calls. In the true ending, Best Served Hot, things go wrong with the bistro. Upon finding a trash photo in Vincent's office of Vincent and Manon together, and a bloody locket of them inside the freezer, Vincent finds us and knocks us out, tying us in the freezer. Once we get out, we get into an encounter with Vincent, where we can slowly piece together what happened. Vincent reveals that the one thing people kept criticizing him on was that the food isn't cooked with love, which he had dismissed until Rhodey came in, solely in hopes of rekindling his relationship. This results in Vincent getting into a short-term relationship with her solely to kill her off and feed her to him, her body being cooked into the grilled hanger steak. The whole idea being that because we loved her, it would somehow add that love people kept criticizing. But it just felt illogical given his character, especially seeing as the whole Vincent is so desperate to taste he's willing to commit cannibalism thing was pretty damn good, and was pulled off pretty well. In comparison, Vincent killing Manon to feed her to you rather than building the whole Vincent is desperate to taste angle made it feel wasted. Vincent is shown to be, although cruel at times, analytical and logical, especially when it came to food. And if he was going to take the risk to kill someone, I don't see why he'd do it for Rhodey, just to test if he'd say it was cooked with love. Especially given if it did, what would he do with that? Go to every customer's home and kill their mothers every time they order? Even Vincent should know that, even if it worked, it changed nothing in regards to that complaint. Vincent doing it for himself, on the other hand, and for his taste, just makes more sense. Although still illogical, it makes sense that he get desperate enough to see it as a solution, and try to keep doing it should it work. But we know that's not the angle because the hanger steak being for Rhodey, and Vincent not trying it himself upon Rhodey refusing to eat it. Either way, to me it feels like that added twist just cheapened the character of Vincent as well as the ending itself. Again, good game, but man, did adding that twist make the climax resonate far less than it could have, if they had just made Vincent kill Manon with the same intention of tasting something as he tried with Rhodey. Number 4. The mystery man was actually the good guy, and Larry was Willie Mack from Let's Find Larry. Another good game falling hard at the twist. In fact, seeing as both twists are revealed at the same time, I've decided to count them both. Let's Find Larry is a Where's Waldo inspired horror game where you must find Larry, your best friend from high school, throughout different environments, levels, and crowds. However, things get dark as it becomes obvious that Larry doesn't want to be found by you again and again, as you're presented more as a stalker than anything. Eventually, though, in a dark alleyway, you meet this odd fellow who seems to be part of the Mafia or some other ominous group. He demands you keep finding Larry because they've been trying to find him for a long time for unexplained reasons. As it continues, Larry begs you not to tell them where he is because they have his family, and this reaches a crescendo as we shoot Larry with a sniper rifle when he's trapped on top of a building. It's here we're finally told who Larry is, a man named Willie Mack, who we learn from quick glimpses is a notorious serial killer who is known for particularly graphic crime scenes. And on top of that, our mystery man was really trying to get revenge for the killings. The problem is, neither twist feels earned at all, especially not Willie Mack. The end just feels shallow to me because you go from this angle of you're stalking an innocent man to, oh my god, he's a super duper powerful killer that can survive a 40-foot drop, a bullet wound, and still somehow cut somebody in half just with a knife. It also takes somebody's skin and wear them without anybody noticing. The ending, as well as the character of Willie Mack itself, just feels more like something out of a Jeff the Killer OC fanfic than anything. Plus, why didn't the mystery man ever just tell us that's why he was hunting him down instead of trying to be all mafioso and threatening about it? Doesn't make much sense either, given a lot of players thereby tried helping Larry during the trash can scene, which isn't a choice the game lets you make, unfortunately. There was a cool angle to be had about Larry just being an innocent guy that you stalked relentlessly until he was mistaken for Willie Mack and killed, which at least to me is a much more interesting and horrifying angle, but it's all just thrown away for this super obvious he was actually evil angle. You were right for stalking him the entire time. Good job, player, but also you died because my super overpowered killer OC killed you. By the way, did you know that he has a dark, mysterious past, and that when he's not bald, he has rainbow hair, and he's secretly the god of death, and also everyone loves him, and his eyes grow purple, and they're like orbs, and he gets all the ladies he wants because he's so cool. Number 3. We are a god alien that killed the ghost's husband, from Gintama Silver Soul. Get ready, folks, because this game makes next to no sense. Gintama Silver Soul is a sci-fi thriller horror game where you play as a young man who, upon being chased by the army, jumps off a cliff into a portal that teleports him to, and I quote, another part of the earth where alien creatures fall. This winds up being a catacomb ruins where you must collect collisionless giant floating weapons in order to get past wooden planks and sneak around enemies like zombie with cargo pants. zombie with cargo pants. Now, you might be wondering where the aliens the game's description promised us. And unfortunately, you couldn't predict how they decide to tie aliens to the story if you got so high you imagined your girlfriend wasn't dead. Near the end of the game, you make it to a supermarket area with a ghost lady wandering the halls. If we help a man in the stalls to get toilet paper, we are then confronted by the spirit for not paying, which we then tell her that we have no money. This somehow leads to a confrontation where she claims she can give us anything we want, including god powers, but demands to know why we killed her husband. And if you think this came out of nowhere, that's because it did. As the ghost burns down the supermarket, she reveals that she and her husband were from another world and landed on this planet while waiting for God's power to recover. But that we killed her husband because we didn't know how to get here and also stole his god powers. We're teleported into space where we can do absolutely nothing while a narrator gives a long talk about the lore that ends by saying we became a true god and that he was particularly disappointed in the world. And honestly, if I became a god and realized I was trapped in a game like this, I think I'd be disappointed too. It probably doesn't help that the game was translated from another language, making it a lot harder to understand what the game's story actually is supposed to be, but man, is it a terrible twist. Number 2. Food Town is a city for the societally unwell. From Dream of Gluttony. Dream of Gluttony is an RPG Maker horror game where we play as a chef named Sissy who gets lost in the forest. Looking for a train, a group points them towards a town nearby called Food Town, where its inhabitants are named after various foods: bread and butter, dumpling, tomato, and many more. There are 2 different routes that come naturally from playing the game twice in a row. Our first route comes from us pretending to be like them as well, giving ourselves the name Passion Fruit, and seeing the wonders of the town, meeting the townspeople, and eventually succumbing to being a permanent resident of the village, seeing the place as a happy town with sweet and kind residents. Our second route, however, is more sinister, where we instead give our real name and call ourselves a human, rather than a food like the rest of them. This results in us being kidnapped because the town people are paranoid they'll be taken away, to which we learn the truth. The things we saw in Route 1 were not real. Although real to the townspeople, it's actually far more gruesome. Candy is a cannibal who eats people for being sweet, Tomato is a masochist who harms themselves constantly and feeds their blood to the inhabitants as tomato sauce. However, the real twist comes upon arriving at Milk's house. Milk reveals they are a scientist that studies them and has joined their lifestyle. More specifically, it's revealed that Food Town is, quote, a place for maladjusted people, so they can do as they please without being judged, even going as far as saying it's better than a normal village. Although the main problem with this twist is it kind of glorifies it and treats Sissy as being in the wrong for wanting to leave and being disturbed by, you know, the decapitated heads, or the fact that Tomato shoots themselves, or the fact that there's a forest of entrails, and that the town murders innocent people on the regular. What I mean by this is, as soon as you have the talk with Milk, its dialogue is done in a way where you're supposed to feel like Sissy's the bad guy here, and that they're in the wrong for judging it. Milk implies that Dumpling killed someone after being bullied for being mute, and argues that it would be wrong to put a 13-year-old boy in jail, even though they killed someone. Even more blatant, when Sissy mentions that Candy is literally killing and eating people, Milk quite literally replies, "That's just your opinion, and you're just trying to control everyone." The game doesn't really do much to show that Sissy really is in the right, constantly trying to make you feel like this is the bad route. It's also explicitly shown to us that Sissy accidentally gave a child with a nut allergy nuts, despite the mother telling them quite a few times that their son was heavily allergic to them, resulting in Sissy committing what's effectively manslaughter. It's strongly implied that Sissy should have been part of this society, you know, next to the cannibal and the literal demon, and that they're just being judgmental and harsh by going against it and wanting to leave. And after the talk with Milk, Sissy is given this bad guy aura where she has the intimidating shadow over her face and is given these clearly antagonist-like quotes. "They don't deserve to live so calmly here. They should all suck it up and try to work harder and become part of society. Why do I have to do it? Why do I have to try so hard and they find a place where no one finds them? They should all just be exterminated." Earlier, Sissy says the same things one of us would say in regards to getting them help and not accepting their behavior. But the game doesn't really argue anything against any of Sissy's points, mostly just shrugging and going, they're quirky like that, rather than making any meaningful arguments against it. While again, glorifying the idea that people who are at risk of hurting themselves or others should simply just be allowed to. Again, Tomato literally shoots themselves. Giddily, might I add. It just rubs me the wrong way as far as themes go. Whereas the twist could work if they were more willing to either make Milk a lot more obviously unstable and correct their beliefs, or actually try to combat the points that Sissy was making. Then the twist might work a tiny bit better, but the main problem is that the twist turns a story about a mysterious village of people that might be real food turned human, and instead demonizes mental health and rehabilitation, while glorifying the harm going without them can cause. Before we go on to our number 1 worst twist, I'd like to speedrun through some honorable mentions. Zaphroth is controlled by the evil scroll and then dies, from Wallen and the Werewolf. Akari died of an unrelated car crash, from Hello Hello. Gregory drops the elevator, from FNAF Security Breach Ruin. It's all because of capitalism, from Tungulus. And finally, for our number 1 spot, 5-year-old is tortured and then becomes God, from Chi. Okay, I'm gonna be very blatant. This is what inspired me to make this video in the first place. The game Chi follows a 5-year-old girl named Chi-chan and their dog Mitsuru. You live in a cult village where your father is the cult leader. They're given 4 strict rules. 1, take care of the people. 2, don't go upstairs without a parent. 3, give blood every Sunday to make sure nobody is affected with the virus. And 4, don't ever go into the forest. However, when Mitsuru goes into the forest, Chi chases after them, and this results in them being knocked out and locked away in a secret prison by their father. Seeing as Chi broke one of the rules, her father believes she is infected and is now a demon in the place of Chi, and so he tortures them brutally in several rather unpleasant scenes, many of which feel like the creator just looked up worse torture methods and then put them into the game. You know, with the 5-year-old. Most blatant of these being the white rice torture scene, which is a form of solitary confinement that removes all senses and depersonalizes them to the point of losing identity. And of course that's skipping the toe removal scene, the drowning scene, and right after that we get a scene where we're forced to stay in a room with nothing but a rotten corpse for several days, and then we're forced to eat our own dog. However, we're eventually able to escape, killing our father and returning to the village, where we find that everyone is dead. However, the voice in our head, which has been following us throughout the entire game, reassures us that we can create anything we want to, and effectively have god powers, which was also mentioned earlier, where the father refers to themselves as God and says they are disappointed because Chi was the most likely to become the next god, which ends with Chi remaking the world via poorly drawn caricatures of themselves, which binary codes tell us that the characters' souls were forced back into these drawings, and that they are unable to control any of their actions anymore, with Chi becoming the god of the town. There's a little more to the ending after that, where some people come by and convince Chi to come to the real world and leave this place behind, but in regards to the whole child is tortured and child becomes a god thing, this really sucks. Not only does it pull the cult leader was actually right, but the way it builds up to it is almost solely done in brief mentions about your father being God, the voice strip telling you, and of course being brutally tortured in these long-winded torture scenes. Cool. But anyways, those are my top 8 worst twists in indie horror. What are some games you know of that have terrible twists? Should I try my hand at making more top 10 lists like these? And more importantly, what are your thoughts? Do my opinions suck? This was Spice from CutCafe, signing off. See ya!